Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday. My name is Kate, and I am a coach in the writing, reading, speech assistance area of the Learning Commons at COD. My co-host today is also a coach in WRSA. Her name is Rosanna, and she's to my bottom left. I don't know where she is on your screen. So today we're going to be talking about APA formatting for two of the assignments that you're working on currently for this course, but the information that we're giving you today will serve you well throughout your time as a nursing student, not just at COD, but beyond that, should you choose to do that. So just give me a minute. I'm going to share my screen very briefly. Let's see. Okay, can everybody see? Okay, so I'm pretty sure we're at least somewhat familiar with Zoom by this point. I know that do you do your class usually through Collaborate, or is it through Zoom? Zoom, okay. Okay, so you're really familiar with Zoom. Okay, today there are 3 different ways that you can participate. I would say the majority of people are using the first 2. So you can unmute yourself and share verbally there, or you can ask questions or give responses through the chat box. You can also use a reaction icon, but like I said, most people are using the first 2. There are places where I'll ask you to respond, and usually that's happening in the chat. But if you have any questions throughout the presentation today, please feel free to ask whenever those questions come up. Rosanna is manning that chat box for me, and she's very good at it. And so I will get that question as soon as you ask it, basically. And sometimes that's helpful just when we're on that slide to be able to address that particular question there. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about APA formatting and APA documentation style. The American Psychological Association, which is the APA in APA, is a set of rules that academic authors use when submitting papers in the standard accepted by other scientists, social scientists, educators, and psychologists who read the paper. So we most often are seeing this style being used in the sciences, though we do occasionally have it come up in some English courses. You may be familiar with APA, or you may be familiar with its sort of humanities counterpart with MLA. I'm going to stop my video and then move on to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to start with just sort of gauging where you are. So on a scale of 1 to 4, 1 being totally uncomfortable and 4 being very, very comfortable with it, how comfortable are you with writing this assignment, meaning the discussion board or the philosophy of nursing and health, in APA format? So if you want to go ahead and put your number in the chat.
1 3 3 2 3 1 2 3 2. Lots of 1s, 2s, and 3s.
Okay, good. So we still have some room to move should we need to, and hopefully you walk away from today with something that you didn't know that you'll be able to use for these particular assignments. Our agenda today is going to focus on 3 areas. We're going to look at APA page format overall. We're going to look at in-text citations and a little bit of our reference list entries in that section as well. And then we're going to talk about some strategies for success and just look very carefully at those assignments and the rubrics for those assignments that we've already mentioned, the discussion board post and the philosophy of nursing and health.
There is a handout that goes with today's session. I have just put it in the chat. So if you can please just download it, and that'll help keep you on track with what we're going over, as well as be really good for after the workshop to refer back to.
Thanks. The document that's a Word document is specific to today's workshop. The PDF is more of a reference for you to use later on. So if you want to follow along, the Word document is the one to follow along with, and the PDF I'll mention, but it's really just for you to kind of save and keep for yourself as you're beginning to write. So we're going to start by looking at the overall APA page format. I'm going to start by kind of front loading a whole host of resources that are available to you as a COD student. So the first one that we'll talk about is on WRSA's webpage. So this is an APA template that you can find by going to our writing resources. The fastest way to get to our page is by using the link that Rosanna is going to put in the chat. But the other fastest way is to just type WRSA in the search bar of the COD homepage. Once you're there, you click on writing resources. And when you hit the plus mark next to APA format, you'll see a list of resources below that. You want to click on 7th edition APA format Google Docs template. It's circled here in red. And that will take you to a template for general APA format. This is a template that you can use for any class, not just a nursing course. It has the margins, the font, the spacing, all of those kinds of details that come along with APA are already set in this template for you. That includes a title page. You'll just need to kind of substitute your information within the brackets that's in that template and you're good to go. Templates are a huge time saver when you're writing, particularly when you're writing in a documentation style like APA that has a lot of details in it that just kind of get a little cumbersome to have to look up every single time. So using a template can help cut out some of that, that time of having to look for it. And with this one, you can download it as a Word document and save it to your computer, or you can copy it and then save it to your own Google Drive. You also have access to a ton of resources through the library. The COD library has a health science librarian for nursing students to help you in whatever stage you are in the nursing program and whatever assignment you're working on for the particular nursing class. So Deborah Smith is the health sciences reference librarian. You can kind of see the bottom of her, the top of her head there at the bottom of your screen. But she has on her page for through the library a ton of resources to help you, again, not just for this class, but for classes as you move forward in the program. There are attached files, again, that you can't see here, but there's a list of, I think, 15 or so of them that are sort of organized by type of assignment, by class that you're working on. And so these are really helpful tools to kind of bookmark and to come back to when you need them. You also can see on the right-hand side under the menu, there's sections for evaluating sources and for citing sources, and then there's some handouts there. Those will also be helpful when you're working with APA as well. So the biggest resource that I can give you today, or probably the most helpful resource I can give you today, is a nursing specific template. And it's not just specific to nursing, it's specific to this assignment that you're going to be working on. I'm actually going to share that screen so you can kind of see what you're looking at and how you can use it. So let me go ahead and do that. This is another Google Docs template. You won't see this listed on our website, so you'll have to use the link that's being included in the chat. It's the one that ends, I think, with something Q, AOQ. So this is that template. You can see here it has sections of text within brackets, and that will be what you'll fill in with your information. Again, it's formatted, though, exactly how you need it to be formatted. If you scroll down into that template, you can see I have headings already set up. So I have introduction, philosophy of nursing, and philosophy of health, and then conclusion. These are the headings that are required per the assignment. And so they're already there for you, and they're already set up for you to just sort of fill in the information underneath it. The explanation of each of the other kinds of heading levels are explained there within the text of the paragraph, or you can find information about headings on some of the other APA resources I'll give you a little bit later on. And then finally, the last, I think it's 2 pages of the template, includes a complete reference list, and all the references that are on here are ones that you could theoretically use for your philosophy of health or nursing and health paper. So these include chapters from your textbook. These were updated last year, and so unless you're using a brand new edition of the textbook, it shouldn't be a problem. It also includes some of those trickier sources, like pieces like the Joint Commission National Patient Safety Goals. It also has, I think, the COD Nursing Student Handbook. These are harder to know kind of the ins and outs of citing, and so we've provided them here for you, in addition to some notes on the side there in the comments that will just help you kind of determine what's going to stay and what's going to go and what you might have to look at revising. I saw that there was a hand up.
Fatima, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, so the heading that you have, like the introduction and everything,
Yes.
we leave that there, right?
Yes. So anything that's not in the brackets is going to stay there, and anything that is in the brackets is going to be changed.
Got it. Thank you.
So that's actually, you kind of picked out the one main difference between this template and then the other sort of just general APA template, usually APA does not call for an introduction. In fact, it tells you not to include the introduction as a heading. But for this particular paper, it's really helpful for the instructors because they need it to be a section in the paper. And so we've included it here, even though it's a little bit of a deviation from a standard APA style sort of heading. So there's a couple of different things that are like that throughout here. And some of that is included in the references as well, just ways to access the information quickly and directly for your instructor. And so it might look a little bit different than what you might see in reference sort of resources like Purdue OWL or something like that. Are there any other questions on the template that I could answer?
I have a question for the reference.
Yep.
So I know there's like website like that we use like in high school or like before nursing program that like allows you to type in the information and it generates the reference. Can we use that? So what's the answer I want to give here? Yes and no, right? So the citation generators are generally speaking pretty good, but they are not by any stretch of the imagination foolproof. And so some of the ones that you may have used in high school are actually a little dated by this point. And we have some other tools that are a little bit more accurate. So for example, within the COD database, most of the databases, when you search for a source there and you come up with an entry that you want to use, if you click through to that, more often than not, you'll find a section that says cite, and it will create the reference list entry for you within the database. So it's all included there. Even something like Google Scholar usually has that citation created for you. Other options include things like Noodle tools, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later on. But the answer is yes and no, or yes with an asterisk, and make sure that you're checking it against the resources that you have that are a little bit more stable, like the Purdue OWL or the APA manual. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay, good. All right, let me go back to the PowerPoint. So are there any other questions about the overall document formatting or the templates that I've shared? All of the links that Rosanna has been sharing in the chat box will also get sent to your instructor as a follow-up. And so all of these links can also be included on your Blackboard shell so that you can have access to them regularly throughout the semester. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about the overall format, we're going to talk about the format and the content of in-text citations. So reference citations, and that reference page that you just saw on the template are reference citations. They tell us three different things about our source. They tell us who or what authored it or created it, when it was published, and then where we can find it. So the who or what is the who wrote it, right? And that is sometimes a person, sometimes it is people, plural, and sometimes it is a corporate entity, a group, something like that. So we have to kind of get a little bit creative sometimes when it comes to thinking about the who of our sources. It is not just as simple as a single author like it may have been in your previous sort of work with source material. When it was published includes just the publication date. It does not include for internet sources the last update, or it doesn't include the copyright date. So if that's all you're able to find, we have an option in APA that allows us to indicate there isn't a date available for it. But don't use that copyright date. Make sure they're using a publication date or a last update. And then finally, where it was published includes in the reference list things like URLs or DOIs, but it can also include, or should also include, a page number or a page number alternative to help your reader locate cited information. And again, the goal here is to get your reader, in this case your instructor, to locate that information quickly and easily. And so that's why we have page numbers there or page number alternatives, which we'll talk about in a little bit. there are 4 things to remember when it comes to in-text citations. We're going to have the reference written on the reference list first. We always want to kind of start with that. Then we're going to work on writing signal phrases. Then we're going to include the actual source material, either in the form of a paraphrase or a direct quote. And then we're going to elaborate on that. So we're going to look very closely kind of at each part here. This is a reference list entry for a print source. And we always want to start by writing this. It's a really good habit to kind of start now as you're beginning writing in an academic setting at the college level, is to, keep track of your sources in an organized way. And one of the ways you can do that is to start with a reference list as soon as you start writing, sometimes even before you've actually drafted anything. So this is, again, a reference for a print source. And we have our 3 sort of main parts represented here. We have the who in the author, we have the date here in parentheses, and then we have the what and where that follows it. This is like publication information. A couple of things to point out about formatting of a reference list entry or just a reference list overall. It is going to be double spaced like the rest of your text, and it includes a hanging indent. This is probably one of the only places you'll ever use a hanging indent. It's where that second the second in any line that follows per entry is going to be indented to the right, just 1 tab. There are ways that you can do this by changing the settings of your document formatting. If that's something that people have questions about, I can provide links for that in the follow-up, and we can talk about it a little bit later on when we have some time for questions. Okay. So once we have our reference list entry done, we're going to move on to work with in-text citations. So in-text citations have two different varieties. One is a narrative and one is a parenthetical. A narrative citation is going to begin with a signal phrase. And that signal phrase has a few kind of pieces to the equation. It has the author plus the date in parentheses, just like we saw it in the reference list entry. And then it has a verb in past tense for APA, and that is our signal phrase. So this formula can be used to kind of introduce any source material that you're using in either your discussion board post or the philosophy of nursing and health. So for the source that we just looked at, minor is our author, our date is 2019, and we're going to use the verb stated. And that is our completed signal phrase. You want to introduce any paraphrase with the signal phrase that includes the author or authors and the publication date. And the handout that you have, the one that's called APA signal phrases and verbs, that's the PDF, includes notes and additional examples of signal phrases on the first page, and then it includes a whole list of verbs on the second page. So that, again, is a really good reference for you to use now for these assignments and then later on. I still refer to that handout or that list of kind of verbs, especially when I'm writing. It's helpful to just kind of have reminders that there are other verbs besides stated, right? So many students who add the who, what, and where in parentheses after the paraphrase or quote are doing something called, or are using something called a parenthetical citation. And that's usually happens because that's how we were taught to document our research, either in high school or just in other college courses, right? That we were taught to use those parenthetical citations. You may have even gotten papers back before that says like include citation here, and it's just a little parentheses kind of at the end of your sentence. And that's not wrong per se, but it's not as effective as something like a narrative citation, because it makes it difficult for your reader to immediately see when they start reading your sentence the difference between your ideas and those that you're providing from a source. So while parenthetical citations are a thing, they are correct. You are still considered cited if you include a parenthetical citation. The more effective method is to use this narrative method that we've just talked about by introducing the author and the date at the beginning of the sentence, and then it's very, very clear to your reader where that information is coming from, i.e. your source. I have a few more examples of this. So here's an example that kind of changes the order of things a little bit. So according to the Code of Ethics for Nurses, and here you see our first indication of what to do if you don't have a date for your source. So if you do not have a date for your source, or you cannot find a date other than the copyright date, you want to use N period D period, which stands for no date. You include that here in your in-text citation, and you'll also include it on your reference list. And here we have a sort of really good example of a non-person author, right? So here we have the Code of Ethics for Nurses. That's how we're going to indicate who kind of wrote it or where the source came from. In this case, we didn't have like a formal author, and so we're going to use kind of the title of it. In this case, we have multiple authors. We're going to list them here. This is for the first citation. After that, we can kind of abbreviate it a little bit. And then you have the standard author, date, and then verb with asserted. Here's another one with a group corporate author and then no date for that source as well. And here's one that has a parenthetical citation for a video. And you know that it's a video just because you can see a timestamp there with the 4217. Questions about any of these?
Sorry, are we only supposed to put the date, the year for the date, or do
Yes.
you want? Okay,
You'll usually you do the sort of full date in the reference list entry, and then you do the year in the in-text. So we typically try to save a little bit of space as much as we can when it comes to like some of those in-text citations. That's why we can kind of abbreviate or shorten. If it's a long list of authors, we shorten it down to the first author and then the phrase et al, ETAL period. And that's to indicate that there are other authors, but you're gonna be able to find it on the reference list by looking at the first author. So yeah, just the year there. Other questions?
Sorry, could you say that again? So in text, we would use just the first author listed and then ETAL?
Yeah, so it depends on how many authors you're working with. If it's one or two, you're gonna list them, right? So if it's just Potter and Perry, it's gonna always be Potter and Perry 2017. If you have so if we leave off Stockard in this, right? The first reference has to be the complete one, right? Within reason. So for this one, you're gonna list Potter, Perry, Hall, and Stockard in your first citation. And then if you refer to that same exact source later on, it would be Potter et al 2017.
And is that et al in parentheses or just regular?
Just like another word after it, almost like
Okay.
another name, right?
Okay.
So it's lowercase e t space al period and then the date in parentheses.
Okay.
So all of this will be kind of detailed for you. It's really hard. Some of these presentations are difficult when it comes to things like citation because the types of sources that people can use in a research paper varies widely, right? So we can have any number of sources with any number of conditions that are unique to that particular paper. And so it's difficult to say like, oh, it's always going to be this, or it's always going to be this, or I'm going to show you examples of this thing because I know for sure that that's going to happen. That's nothing we can know. There's nothing in that we can know for sure. So all of that to say, these resources that I'll give you at the end of today, in terms of the APA style website and the Purdue OWL, and that you'll get in this follow-up to your instructor, those are going to be sort of a lifeline to answering those questions that you have that when you come across a source that doesn't behave like some that you've seen before, right? So if you come across a source that has 20 authors, which is not uncommon, right? We do see that, especially for things like medical journal articles and things like that. You're going to have to consult that reference in order to write that citation anyways. I'm going to have to consult that reference in order to write that citation. Most of us are. There's very few of us that have this memorized down to the T. And so they're all really great questions, and being able to find the information that you need to answer those questions is also a really good sort of practice and habit to start.
Will all of the downloads that are being placed in the chat be put into Blackboard for us to access as well in case we had any issues doing it?
I will put them there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So they can go into Blackboard. Also, most of these are available either on that library, the specific page with Deborah Smith. They're also available through a link that I'll show you later on, which is just the sort of research help tab or page through the library's website as well. All of these are kind of here for you. It does take some digging around and getting used to it. I suggest, and I suggested this to a group of students the other day too, I would start bookmarking everything, right? Like start a folder in your bookmarks of just like APA resources and just bookmark every one of those pages that has something on it that you can use. So that includes, our template page. It includes that individual page through the website or through the library's website with Deborah Smith. It can also include kind of sub pages that she's linked there. Anything on the Purdue OWL. I have multiple links for APA resources on my own bookmark that I refer to at least once a day. So it's a good kind of like building your library of resources too. And you can use them once they get posted to Blackboard as well. Okay, so I want to take a minute to talk about when and how we use quotations and what the citation for that looks like versus paraphrasing. So this is a quotation is considered exact words. We're going to enclose them in quotation marks. And it is really important that it does use the exact words of the original source. So notice that when the idea comes from a print source, and actually any source that you're quoting from, you're going to include a page number in the parentheses. And if you're using a source that doesn't have page numbers, you're going to instead include an alternate page identifier. So I'm going to try to explain this, and then if I forget anything, Rosanna, you can add in. So Rosanna has been doing a lot of work with this in the last week, and so she's kind of our resident expert on it now. But if you have a source that is particularly online, we have those sources don't have page numbers. When you come across that source, you still need to find a way to indicate where you got that direct quote from for your reader. And so there are a couple of options for that. One is to do it by paragraph number. The chances of those paragraphs already being numbered for you are pretty slim. So you're going to count the paragraphs and then indicate which paragraph the quote came from in the parentheses instead of page number 75. So let's say that it's paragraph 16, you're going to put PARA period as an abbreviation for paragraph, and then 16. And then the reader will know that it's from this source in paragraph 16. I'm going to be able to find it. I'm going to have to count the paragraphs too as the reader, but that's just kind of the agreement that we have, right? The other option is if the source is divided up by headings or sections, you can include those headings or sections to indicate location. So let's say that it's under the introduction, or it's under data results or something like that. You would put heading data results and then that's it in the parentheses because you don't have a number associated with it. So you just want to be able to indicate where somebody can find it when they go to look for it on that source. And remember, if you're looking at an online source and it's just like you're scrolling through this long thing, that can get really difficult to find if you're the reader and you really do want to locate that direct quote. So that's sort of our page identifier or alternate page identifier. If you have a PDF that has static page numbers in it, or you have a print source like this source is, then you can just use the page number. There are examples of this on your handout, the Word document handout. At the bottom of page 1, there are some samples of what this looks like. So that's for quotations. The example that I'm giving you here for paraphrasing is from the same source, and you see that I have included the page number here. That's because it's not hard for me to do that. I haven't had to count any paragraphs, and it was a print source, so I can just include the page number. APA does not require you to include a page number or a page identifier, the alternate page identifier, if you're paraphrasing, but a lot of instructors will ask for it because they find it very helpful in being able to find where you got your information from. And you can imagine how much harder it is to find it when it's paraphrased versus when it's quotations. So that is something that I would check with your individual instructors with, whether it's for this assignment or assignments for another class. Ask if they want page numbers or alternative page identifiers for paraphrased information. But you can see, other than the quotation marks and the actual sort of language of the material, In this case, the quote is one can let go of power without letting go of control. And the paraphrase is that wielding power and having control is not the same. That's the only difference in those two examples. And so we're going to cite paraphrased information and quoted information the exact same way. So they're both going to get a citation. One's going to have the quotation marks and use the exact words, and the other is going to be put into your own words. Your discussion board assignment indicates that you should not use any direct quotes, and that instead all of your source material that you use as support should be paraphrased. I don't believe the same requirement exists for your philosophy of nursing and health, but you'd have to check with your instructor on that. Any questions about the difference between quotations and paraphrases and how we handle citations of them?
I just wanted to say that I strongly recommend to limit quotations because we want to know what the student is thinking and how they're understanding.
Yeah, and we sort of, that's our recommendation, I guess, if we had a recommendation, but also just what we see happening in a lot of assignments is that indication from instructors that they prefer paraphrasing over quotations. I've seen some assignments and rubrics that have a limit on the number of quotations, like where a student can only have 2 in a 5-page paper or something like that. So it really does depend on the assignment, on the instructor, and sometimes even the content of like the course content. So just make sure that you're checking, preferably before you start writing, just so that you can kind of be prepared for that as you begin drafting. All right. So the piece that's often forgotten is elaboration. So this comes after the paraphrase or the direct quote, and it should be used for both. And it provides the reader with an analysis or an explanation or, I guess, elaboration, right, of the cited material. So it's crucial that you use this section to help your reader understand how you as the author would like them to use or understand the source material. It's a piece that's forgotten because a lot of times it's like, well, this is self-explanatory. I'm using this here for a reason, right? I've included the source material for a reason, and that's got to be obvious to my reader. And unfortunately, a lot of times it isn't. And so giving your reader some direction, giving them some support in understanding how you would like them to use this, how it in fact supports a claim that you've made or a source material claim that has been made, is really, really important in the development of research sort of writing paragraphs. And this really is a paragraph level kind of thing. So let's take a look at an example of this. It's a long paragraph and there's a lot of text here. So I'm going to read through the part that we're going to work with. So each paragraph should have a topic sentence that leads the reader into the general idea of the paragraph. And you're going to follow this up with a main idea. It might take you a couple of sentences to explain the idea. And then you're going to back up your idea with data or a supporting fact from an expert to help prove your point. Okay, so that's the sort of main idea of my paragraph. Now I'm going to give you support or data from a source. So for example, according to Hoyle 2019, when students provide research data from a noted expert in the field, the idea is more appealing to the reader. And now you're ready to move on to another point that you want to make about this topic. Explain your thoughts, then you're ready once again to support it with research. So now we have another cited piece there. And remember that you must show you have an understanding of the information you are presenting. Anyone can copy and paste someone else's ideas. What's important is what you have gleaned from those ideas. And again, this is also why we use a lot of paraphrasing, because it's your sort of written interpretation and written summary of what you read in that source. So if we take a look at that same paragraph, the highlighted sections in blue are cited material, and everything in between that is either that introduction, main idea, or elaboration on what comes in the blue text. So this piece of it, like I said, is often left out, but really, really important to kind of guiding your reader to where you need them to be. This is especially important for things like argumentative papers, but it's also important for things like your philosophy of health and nursing, where you need to kind of pitch your actual philosophy. And so if you have a support for that in a published text or in source material, you need to explain how that supports your own personal philosophy using the source material that's maybe a more general philosophy. So just as some like parting reminders on this section, remember that you always want to share the who of your source, the when, whoops, and the what. That's all coming in your reference list entry and also in your in-text citation. And then you want to be as specific about the where as you possibly can be with your pages or page alternatives. And then don't forget about why it's important that you shared that information from the source. Okay, we just covered a ton of material, so I'm going to pause for questions. Does anybody have any questions here about in-text citations, reference list entries, anything like that? We're good? Okay, I'm going to move on. So the last piece we're going to talk about are some strategies for success with the two assignments that are kind of happening concurrently right now. So that includes the discussion board posts and then the philosophy of nursing and health. So this is the rubric that we have for your discussion board post. It is 300 to 350 words long. It should be an APA format with in-text citations and reference list entries. And from what I understand, you may not have like a full reference list. You might only have 2 entries for a discussion board post. So it won't be a real robust reference list. It should be a comprehensive overview of the week's topic in your own words that addresses the discussion board question or questions. And remember that you should not be using quotations in your discussion board post. I did have some questions earlier this week from students about like formatting and how things kind of change when you put it into Blackboard to post it on the discussion board. So I don't have necessarily a great answer for that. I know I've experienced.
I could tell you that there is a change in the format.
Okay.
And that's not, I know that, so that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, the biggest issue that I have experienced myself, right, in moving things from like a Word document into that kind of format is with the hanging indent of the reference list entry. So that almost always goes or gets really confusing once it gets copied and pasted in. So if you have it kind of all in one line or just as 2 kind of regular lines of text without the hanging indent, it usually is still readable and understandable within a discussion board post situation. So that's your discussion board post. Go ahead.
So as far as copying and pasting into Blackboard, how do I do that? Because when I tried to just copy and paste the way that I know how, which is to highlight and then copy and then go in and put paste, it doesn't allow me to do that. Is there another way to do it?
Are you right clicking when you copy or are you using the keyboard commands?
No, I'm right clicking.
Yeah, so a lot of times when you're moving between programs, you have to use the keyboard commands. So Command C or Control C and then Control V is paste.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so you just highlight it and Control C and then go over to Blackboard and then Control V into that text box, and that usually works. I know on our computers on campus that we use as coaches, you cannot use the right click option. You have to use the keyboard, at least the one that I'm using. It requires me to use the keyboard.
Thank you.
Any other questions I can answer about the discussion board, or that maybe your instructor might be able to answer about the discussion board that you're writing?
No, I think that copying and pasting is Control plus C.
Yep.
To do it, yes.
And then paste is V, yep.
Yes.
Okay. So this is again, the assignment that we have or the assignment sheet that we have for the philosophy of nursing and health. I don't know if it's changed at all. Julie, does this look the same as what they have?
It is, yes.
Okay. So this is 2 to 3 pages in length. It is APA format. It has the title page, in-text citations, and the reference list. It does not include an abstract, which a lot of APA papers will include. And it has level 1 headings for introduction, philosophy of nursing, philosophy of health, and the conclusion. Again, all of these headings are available to you and already in the template that is specific for nursing. You want to pay attention to mechanics and grammar for this one, which you obviously should be paying attention to for the discussion board post as well, but that is kind of listed in the rubric for this one, if I remember correctly. As far as approach to the philosophy of nursing and health, in working with this particular assignment in the past, the instructors have always kind of suggested a healthy amount of reading before you ever get to the drafting stage. And so there's some free writing that exists in that first bullet point. Ask yourself and write down your definition of health and your definition of nursing, and then write your personal values and beliefs about life and health. And then there's all these readings that follow. Again, all of these sources are already in your reference list in that template, but you have the Code of Ethics, you have the conceptual framework, Potter and Perry, 2 different chapters on that, and then the theory in Potter and Perry, that's in the second to last bullet point. So reading all of that first is a good place to start. And like I said, you already have your references written for it, so you can really focus your reading on taking notes in that to be able to use in your own philosophy of nursing and health as you begin drafting. You are going to be discussing these separately, which is why they're 2 different level 1 headings. So you're going to be doing your philosophy of nursing and then your philosophy of health. They are not combined in the same section. Questions on that?
Yes, I have a question. Where can I find the new updated direction right now you're showing on the PowerPoint? Because when I look at the Blackboard announcement, it still shows the old one. This is updated, right? This is new one. It's been changed, right?
I don't know, Julie, is this different?
What are you talking about? What is different? The philosophy of nursing?
Right, because when I look at the syllabus, it shows the explanation for this assignment, but the page to look it up, it shows 55. And with the new one, it's 93, like you're showing right now.
I think we had to update it because we have a new version, that's all. New version of that book.
Oh, okay.
Right. So where can I find this new directions?
I could cover that after class with questions to get that.
Okay, thank you.
You're
And Julie,
welcome.
if you have a new textbook that needs to get changed on that template, let me know when I can work on that.
Okay, I didn't even look to see what version you had, so I will.
I can't
Okay.
remember off the top of my head, but yeah.
I know
if you
they
take a
keep
look at it-
changing our textbook versions.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just let me know and I can go in and change it. It's usually a really minor
Yeah, I know.
adjustment that needs
It
to
is
happen.
minor, but it is major in some ways, but okay.
Yeah,
I will.
yeah, and because it's on Google and it kind of just lives there,
I
I
know.
can make the changes and let you know, and then you can just let your students know that. there's
Sure,
been
I
an
will.
adjustment.
I think they have the new version.
Okay. All right, so, whoops. So I'm just gonna redirect you back to some resources. Again, remember that the COD library has a health science librarian who can work with you. And this is not just sort of like a person whose picture is on this page. She's a real person in the library who can work with you in person on any of these assignments that you're working in this class, but then also in subsequent nursing classes that you take. There's also resources available for you at the APA style website. Some people find this to be a little bit more robust than they need, or a little bit harder to navigate than something like the Purdue OWL. So the Purdue OWL is run out of Purdue University. It's their online writing lab, and they have they're sort of the biggest kind of APA MLA resource website that we refer to frequently, that other writing centers refer to frequently. So they have a ton of information on it, but it's also a little bit more, I think it's a little bit more user-friendly than sometimes the APA style website can be. So if you are just getting started with APA and you've never worked with it before, the Purdue OWL is a really great resource so that you can use in an ongoing way. And they update as APA updates. So we have a new edition as of a couple of years ago, and the Purdue OWL had that up and running within a few months, really, of that of that new edition being published. There's also kind of the reference manual that goes with this webpage. There's plenty of desk copies for those in the library for you to use as well. And then to kind of go back to that, oops, what happened here? Hang on a second. To go back to that question about citation generators. Under research help, on the right-hand side, when you click on research help, on the right-hand side, there's a section for citing sources, and that will have information on that page for Noodle Tools, which is a really comprehensive tool where you can store, organize, and generate citations for all kinds of source material. It's a big site, and there's a little bit of a learning curve on using the tool. So I wouldn't suggest it necessarily for your discussion board posts because you are working with a limited number of sources. I actually probably wouldn't even recommend it for the philosophy of nursing and health because you have those references done for you already. But as you get into longer papers or in your more advanced nursing courses, and you have a lot of sources that you're working with, Noodle Tools is a great way to kind of keep those organized, to store them as soon as you come across them and you think you might use them, and then to also generate and then cross-reference your source citations. And then finally, don't forget about our general Google Docs template and then the nursing specific one that's been shared in the chat previously. Okay, so final questions here. Does anybody have any remaining questions about any of the things that we've gone over, or maybe something that you still have a question about that we didn't address? And after you kind of thought through your questions, take a minute to think about and then share in the chat, if you feel comfortable, what you'd like to remember from today's session. So any kind of important takeaway, something that a resource that you want to be sure you remember or you bookmark, anything that you like to kind of carry with you from this session today. You can also unmute and share that if you like.
I think one of the good advices you gave the students was to keep an ongoing list of their references as they use them throughout the whole program. Because I know when I went to grad school, I used my reference list from every class, different sources. And it was really an easy way to get them because you're very familiar with them anyway by then.
Yeah, and especially when you're working with textbooks, those can be the most cumbersome references to write. And so to not have to write them over and over again, right? It's kind of a nice like time saver. Or if you're using chapters from the same book, to write that standard
Right.
textbook.
You just copy and paste the ones.
Yeah, and then you just copy and paste as you go.
Yep.
So we've got some responses in the chat. We've got the Google Doc reference, in-text citations, reference lists, Google Doc citations. And then Jessica says, I would like to remember all of the resources. Aubrey says, I have no questions. She says you were very thorough.
Thank you. Okay, well, this is all good things to kind of keep in mind as you kind of move forward in the program. And now we're kind of back at our bookend slide. So at this point now, I guess 50 minutes later, how comfortable are you with writing this assignment in APA format? Or how comfortable, I guess, will you be when you go to work with some of this material? So go ahead and put that number in the chat, just like the first time.
Ooh, tons of threes.
Oh, good.
1, 2, and then, 1, 4. All the rest threes.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. If you find yourself working on this assignment, writing in APA style or discussion board posts or anything else that you'd like some support with, you can come and visit us in the writing, reading, speech assistance area of the Learning Commons. These are our hours for the semester. We're open a lot and we're available in 3 different kinds of appointments. And so you can meet with us face-to-face in person on campus during these hours. You can also meet with us online in a video appointment. And then we have email appointments where you would submit and upload your paper or draft or outline in some cases to our system, and you will get written feedback from us within 24 hours of that submission or of that kind of scheduled time to look at that. So we have lots of availability to work with you, and we are happy to do it. We work with quite a few nursing students on this particular paper, but just across the semester. And sometimes it's as simple as like, I don't know how to work with, I don't know how to cite or write a reference for this source. And sometimes it's full drafts. And wherever you are in the process and wherever you are for that particular assignment, come and see us and we're happy to support you with that. In order to make an appointment with us or schedule an appointment with us, you'll need to register for an account. This is our kind of login page for it. Rosanna is putting the link for this in the chat. You will click on register for an account and then fill out a really short form. And then you can make and edit and cancel appointments on your own from home or from your phone even if you wanted to. Do not let registering for an account keep you from making an appointment with us. And so if you haven't registered for an account yet, but you know you'd like to come and work with a coach, please feel free to call us or stop by our space in SRC 2102. And someone is going to be there more than willing to help you get that all set up. And then we'll deal with the registration whenever we can get to it. Okay. That's all I have for today. Thank you so much for allowing us into your class today and for taking the time to listen to us on this Friday afternoon. At least it's not sunny where I am, so we're not totally missing out on really good weather. Yeah, I appreciate your time and participation today.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question before you leave?
Of course.
Will we be getting this PowerPoint with us or?
The PowerPoint, no, but we do have it recorded.
Okay.
So I think I can make that available to your instructor once I have it kind of uploaded and set up for us.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And again, we'll send a follow-up with Rosanna actually will send, I think, the follow-up with both the handouts and the links that were shared in the chat today. So if you lost track of any of them, or if they kind of went by too fast in the chat, you'll have access to those in that follow-up as well.
I copied them on a Word doc and I'm going to put them in Blackboard for them.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, I'm going to stop my recording here then.